Today we wrap up Job, and I personally could not be more happy about it. We are reading Job 40 through 42. So let's get to it. So, Job 40, I felt like God was still popping his collar, rightfully so. He's God. Um, but the verse that stood out to me was chapter 40, verse 7. I think that's what my handwriting says, verse 7. Brace yourself like a man. I will question you and you will answer me. And I'm like, ooh, child. Job, because Job this whole time had a lot of questions for God. And God basically said, you don't question me, I question you. Not the other way around. And I was just like, okay, I see that. I see that. Also in this chapter, God was describing um, uh, Behemoth, a Behemoth, and it was a creature. He says large in stature, big, has bone of brass or something like that. And the way he was describing it, I thought he was describing Spike Tail or Spike. I don't know if you guys watch Littlefoot ever, or The Land Before Time, but there are characters in it, and one of the characters in there is a Spike Tail. I don't know the correct name for this dinosaur, but in the movie Land Before Time, his character was Spike. And that's what I thought he was describing. I'm like, is he describing this dinosaur Spike? However, I go to Google and I see what biblical scholars are saying. And they suggest that it's probably a hippopotamus he's describing. Um, so yeah, there's that. But to me, it seemed like he was describing Spike because it just seemed it worked well with Spike. I was like, oh, okay, because he was talking about this large animal that he had to tame, or this large land creature he had to tame, in 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 order to create the heaven and earth as we know it today. Then he goes into chapter 42, and I mean, not chapter 42, chapter 41, and God is still talking, and the verse that stood out to me in chapter 41 is Job 41:11, where he says, who has claim against me that I must pay? Everything under the heavens belongs to me. Everything under the heaven. I'm sorry, it's not plural. I want to make that clear. Everything under the heaven belongs to me. Again, popping his collar, rightfully so. But I was just like, you did all this to Job, so technically he has an ops, and rightfully so, against you. But I mean, he God, and his reasoning surpasses my understanding, is what I'm learning in this Job book, in the book of Job. And in chapter 41, he describes another creature called Leviathan. And for the Leviathan, I thought he was describing a dragon that came out of the sea, because he was like, it spit fire. It You can fish it. It was like, could you fish it out or whatever, like with a hook? So it was in the water, needed to come out of the water. So I was thinking like maybe the Loch Ness monster or something, because I'm like, why nobody told me these creatures was in the Bible before? Nobody mentioned these types of things in the Bible. Nobody mentioned to me that it was a creature in the Bible breathing fire. I would have remembered that. I feel like I would have remembered that. But anyway, so this creature breathes fire. Is like a sword can't penetrate it. You can't beat it with nothing. It took God to basically get this creature under control and taken out for the safety of the world. So it's like God gave an example of him, taking care of the land animals, and then he describes himself taking care of the sea animals. That's crazy as well. And of course, I Googled it, and it said it did describe it as like a mythical creature, So I'm like, so maybe that's why nobody mentioned it, because they don't really like to say myth with the Bible, or they don't like to mix myths with the Bibles. However, God very clearly described this creature. He said, it's big. He described the scales on it. He described everything on this thing. And I'm like, this is a dragon. The only thing that's different from a dragon in this thing is that dragons fly, and I don't know if they live in water. So then, of course, I go to Google, and Google said that it's a mythical creature, like a dragon or a sea creature, some sort of weird sea creature. I'll try to put the little description that I saw on Google in picture, whatever, some sort of TikTok magic, if I can. I don't know, I'm new to this stuff, but yeah, I thought that was very interesting because nobody never told me that dinosaurs and dragons was in the Bible. Okay. And then moving on to Job 42. Now, this man went through all them chapters, which is probably a lot of years of suffering. And then in the last chapter, he get restored. And like, not even the whole chapter, like half of the chapter, towards the end, he gets restored. And I'm thinking to myself, like, he went through this stuff and then he get restored, like halfway through. No, this man suffered a lot, okay? And then it says, Job says, mine ears has heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. Y'all, I thought Job had died. I said, I know he didn't die. I always knew that he got restored. But when he said, I repent in dust and ashes, I was like, oh, man, the man done died. They done lied to me. But he do get restored. He just repents. And then I was thinking to myself, his friends had been saying, if he repents, all of this can come to an end. But he like, I'm not guilty of nothing, so I'm not repenting. So in my head, I'm thinking to myself, if he would have just repented when his friends suggested it, maybe all this, it could have cut the time in half. So all I'm saying, it could have cut the time in half. But anyway, after Job do that, God told Eliphaz, Eliphaz is one of the friends. He basically said, I don't like how y'all treated this situation at all. So Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar go sacrifice what it was, they had to sacrifice some stuff. 7 bulls and rams. 7 bulls and 7 rams. Job has to pray over y'all, and then I'll forgive y'all. Maybe. But Job did pray over them, and God did forgive them. And the sacrifice was all good. And after the sacrifice, it seems like Job's life was restored. He got everything back twice as much. His friends started coming back around. And I'm like, I don't want them around. They wasn't around you when you was thinking. What they doing around now? And then he has 7 sons and 3 daughters again. It doesn't say who his baby mama is, but I presume it's his wife that, from the beginning. So where she said, just curse God and die. I presume this is the same wife who's still in the picture that gave him the seven more sons and 3 daughters. And then it says that the 3 daughters are the most beautiful girls, and Job got to live to see 4 generations, and then he died. So the takeaway is humility before God's matters, and a true encounter with God changes us more than the answers. So yeah, that's what we learned. You can question them all you want, don't mean you're going to get no answers. But we know he got into all this because Satan was traveling to and fro. But Job don't know that. Job don't know that because he wasn't there when it happened. But we got that insight because we read in the Bible. That's how we know why all this stuff happened to him. So, again, see you next time.